Is it safe to come out now? Okay, yeah. Whew. Man, I wonder, what has the internet been up to while I've been away? What the fuck? Anyway, hi, I'm Dream. It's been a while, hasn't it? I've been really busy doom scrolling through waves of YouTube shorts I don't give a shit about for around 2 years. And recently, I realized that's kind of not good. I do apologize for taking so long to upload a video. I quickly realized I didn't have a healthy relationship with content creation, and it was causing me a lot of stress. I think the last video I uploaded is a perfect example of that. I think some of my points in that video are valid, but I highly disagree with the path I took to reach its conclusion. It feels more like a product of needing to create something, rather than something honest with a lot of thought and care put into it like my first 2 videos. And no, I am not counting the Act Special tutorial, that's peak, and I am never going to match that quality. Introductions and apologies out of the way, you see the title of the video, you know what this is about. Today I want to revisit Gen 5. I recently finished the playthrough of Pokémon Black and White, and I wanted to talk about them. I've explored every aspect of the games I could, I talked to as many NPCs as I could, and I have a lot to say about these games. I think I didn't give them a fair chance 2 years ago, and I think I missed the point of the game. In fact, I think a lot of people missed the point of Black and White's story. Let me explain why. When you think about Pokémon Black and White, what's the first thing you think about? If you say anything about garbage designs, I will personally go to your house and plead you to look at the Pokémon I use as a mascot. My child, you are breaking my heart. Jokes aside, it's probably the well-known ethical dilemma Ghetsis talks about at the start of the game. Is catching Pokémon good, or is it bad? Are we just using Pokémon without thinking about their feelings? Even PETA made a really weird parody of the game that talked about this very issue. A lot of people say that Black and White are an attempt at deconstructing the franchise. However, as I talked about in my previous video, I don't think the game is actually about that. I still stand by that interpretation of the story, and I think it makes the game a lot more satisfying as well. In fact, unlike what I said in that video, I think the game is intentionally not about that. I have several reasons to believe this. The first is the way that Team Plasma is framed throughout the entire game. The first time you see Team Plasma, they seem like a group that raises a valid point of view. The speech Ghetsis gives at Accumulatown when you first start the game makes sense. Trainers do catch Pokemon and make them battle. Trainers do use Pokemon to some extent. Thus, it can be argued that we don't treat Pokemon as equals and that they deserve to be liberated. The game even presents N at this point, someone who can speak to Pokemon. At this point, one may believe Team Plasma is a group that has good intentions, and that the game is presenting this moral dilemma as something it intends to discuss. What if I told you that, in believing that, you have fallen for the game's trap? Tell me, what events follow that speech? The next time you encounter Team Plasma, you find them in the Dreamyard. Here they abuse a Munna. Huh, why would they do that if they cared about Pokemon so much? And more importantly, why would the game reveal Ghetsis' true nature so soon? Each subsequent encounter with Team Plasma only makes them look even worse. They carry out a heist in Nacrene City to steal a Pokemon skull. And if you talk to the grunts, they show how little they are willing to hear other people out. They steal Bianca's Pokemon in Castelia City and harass an old man in Nimbasa City, so clearly they are not even trying to be peaceful. I could go on, but I think you understand the point I'm trying to make. The point is that Team Plasma's good image is just an illusion. Their speeches are an illusion. As we see in the next game, there are members of Team Plasma that genuinely care about Pokemon, but in this game, they are intentionally only presenting the deceitful aspects of Team Plasma. If the game was actually trying to present this ethical dilemma it's known for, then why not make Team Plasma more sympathetic? Why make them so comically and ironically evil? That takes me to my second point. N. N is a really interesting character. I feel so upset that I didn't give him the chance he deserved in my previous video. He is the only member of Team Plasma who is shown to genuinely care about Pokemon in the main story. N grew up in isolation from the rest of the world. First, he was abandoned for his weird ability to communicate with Pokemon. Then he lived with those Pokemon, and finally, he was raised by Ghetsis inside a castle made for him, with the purpose of explicitly grooming him into thinking the way he does now. It's because of this that N talks in such a weird way, and why he's so radical with his thinking. He doesn't think that trainers are evil because he has seen it firsthand, but because that is the impression that has been forced upon him since he was a child. In fact, we see him face this conflict between reality and fiction throughout the story. I never expected to hear Pokemon say such things. Your Pokemon look happy. Still, this Pokemon trusts you for some reason. That's good. I couldn't understand it. I couldn't believe that there were Pokemon that liked people, because up until that moment I'd never known a Pokemon like that. Or like a meeting where Pokemon and people communicated with one another and helped one another. N's character development does not revolve around the ethics of catching Pokemon. It is about breaking the illusion he was groomed into believing. It is about learning how to accept the experiences you go through, and accept that the way you perceived the world could be wrong. Why else would one of N's main Pokemon be Zoroark, a Pokemon whose illusions shatter when it gets hit? If the game was actually trying to present the ethical dilemma it's known for, then why not give N an instance in which he's right? With that, I want to talk about my third point. This is a direct response to criticism I have seen of Pokémon Black and White. I think the idea that the gameplay of Black and White works against the message of the game is wrong, and I have seen a lot of people bring it up. I remember watching this video myself, and I think it's a wonderful video with really interesting points. I seriously recommend checking it out if you haven't. However, I think the idea that the gameplay of Black and White contradicts the message of the game is born from reading the game's story as the ethical dilemma I talked about. In reality, Pokemon battles are the way through which the characters are forced to undergo development in the game. Terran has this belief that he has to be the strongest, and that he has to win. He wants to be the best, like no one ever was. Okay, I'm sorry. And it is through fighting him that he discovers how much he has to learn. And that is the reason he becomes a gym leader in the next game. Bianca is a really sheltered kid with overprotective parents, and her journey starts as a way to rebel. And it is only through traveling and fighting against you that she rediscovers her goals, and she finds the strength to stand up against her father. By the next game, she becomes a Pokemon Professor Assistant because of this. And as I already talked about, N undergoes his development because of his encounters against you. By fighting against you, he faces the truth that the world might not be the way he thought, because the reality he sees is that trainers and Pokemon work together. Pokemon battles, thus, serve a purpose in the story of Black and White. They are the way through which characters learn, become stronger, and also act as a metaphorical way for clashing beliefs. You could say that the game doesn't take into account your beliefs, or whether you treat your Pokemon well through the friendship mechanic. There are definitely more ways in which certain aspects of the story could have been fleshed out. However, if the game really was interested in portraying this ethical dilemma, why didn't they reflect that on the gameplay? It's not like Pokemon is a stranger to implementing new mechanics or gimmicks into the series. Perhaps the reason is not that the presentation was wrong, but rather that our understanding of this presentation was wrong in the first place. So then, what is Black and White about? I presented various reasons why I don't think Black and White is about whether it's right or wrong to catch Pokemon. Team Plasma is not presented as a group you are meant to sympathize with, and his character development is about understanding that his vision of the world was manipulated. And the gameplay does use battles to further character development in your rivals. What do I believe the games try to tell then? I think the game is very explicitly a meta discussion. I don't mean this in a fourth wall breaking way, but rather that it's a story discussing about discussions. The game is not trying to tell you that catching Pokemon is bad, or that catching Pokemon is good. I mean, they might be trying to tell you that one because they want you to buy more plushes, but I digress. Instead, the game portrays how some people use strength and other techniques to manipulate others and prevent actual healthy discourse. The easiest way to see this is through Ghetsis. I used to hate him as a character. I thought he was extremely bland and just flat out evil. But seeing Black and White like this has made me understand the point of his character. There are people in the real world who will use reasonable sounding arguments to further their questionable goals, or guilt trip you into following them. There unfortunately are parents and adult figures who deliberately shelter impressionable kids, which leads them to not be able to think for themselves or experience the world. There are people who use strength to put others down when speeches do not work. Ghetsis is the perfect antagonist for this game because he represents that kind of adult and leader perfectly. There is a lot of dialogue in the postgame of Black and White that sheds some light on Ghetsis. It's enough to peer into his methods. Rude, one of the 7 sages, says this about him. "Smells of the sea here. This place has the same ocean smell as where I was born." Ghetsis wandered the lands of this world all over, collecting knowledge of all kinds while searching for like-minded people. From the moment we met, he understood what I desired. The ability to understand the minds and the needs of others. This is an ability that everyone needs to survive. Lord N is a kind and excellent person who understands the hearts of Pokémon. But conversely, perhaps his ability to understand the hearts and feelings of people is not developed enough. But even that was part of the perfection of Ghetsis' plans. When it comes to Ghetsis, I cannot separate the truth from the lies. Not only that, but the Shadow Triad has this to say about him. "You, huh? Ghetsis is gone. He went off somewhere alone after we rescued him from the castle. From the day Ghetsis saved our lives, we have sworn to be loyal to him. Even now, after he ordered us not to search for him." Ghetsis is someone who understands people's thoughts, their needs. He understands what they want. He acts as a dependable figure that others can rely on. He offers a hand to an orphan and gives him a home. Everything he does is an act, an illusion. In that sense, N is his complete opposite. He's someone who understands only Pokémon, and he's very emotional. He's very sincere with his actions, but he's been forced to live under Ghetsis' illusions. This is the meta discussion I was talking about. From the start, the ethical dilemma we're presented with is a trap. It's Ghetsis' illusion, and the entire game is about how he manipulates others into believing him. That's why Team Plasma is the way it is. That's why N is the way he is, and that's why the story is told the way it is. It's a message about talking to others, going on an adventure, not being afraid of your views changing when you encounter conflicting ones. It's also a message about how we have to be careful about toxic discussions, about how we shouldn't conform to living under someone else's illusion just because they're more powerful or because we feel weak. I'd like to end this with a story. 2 twins created the Unova region together, and their fight caused the dragon who worked with them to split. They eventually realized there was no right side, and there was peace for a while. Only when their sons resumed the fight, trying to conquer one another, the region was engulfed in fire and lightning. If only they had shared a cup of tea together, and talked just like the ones that came before. Would they have deserved to see the grey of the original dragon? Would the world be more harmonious? That's the end of the video. I hope you liked it, and I hope you're looking forward to more theories or just discussions about Pokemon. I love this franchise, and I am really glad to be working on videos again. It was honestly really fun just writing the script, recording lines, and editing the video again. And hey, if I can give people content that is not AI generated, I feel like I'm bringing something good into the world. I'm honestly kind of sick of seeing so much AI generated things on the internet, be it art or audio or music or whatever it is. I really miss handmade human content, and that's kind of what I just aspire to bring to people. Anyway, I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you some other time. Goodbye.